Bonjour, mon nom est Jean-Frédéric Ménard. I'm currently a PhD student with the Faculty of Laws of University College London. Today, I will read the section on education reform from the TRC report. Education reform. Since 2011, three major reports on First Nations education have concluded that the status quo is unacceptable and that there is a need for a complete restructuring based on principles of self-government, a culturally relevant curriculum, and stable funding. All three reports agree that Aboriginal peoples themselves must lead and control the process of change. In October 2013, the government released the text of the proposed First Nations Education Act. The bill itself provided no guarantee of increased or stable funding of First Nation schools, leaving such matters to be resolved through regulations, with no assurance of equity in the distribution of resources to educate First Nation children in First Nation schools or in provincial schools. In February 2014, the Government of Canada and the Assembly of First Nations announced an agreement on a new basis for First Nations education reform and legislation. The agreement called for over $2 billion in new funding to reserve schools and replaced the 2% cap on annual increases with a 4.5% annual increase and $1.25 billion from 2016-17 to 2018-19. However, after a position from Aboriginal leaders, the proposed legislation was put on hold pending agreement on the principles for a new act. Based on all that, it has heard from thousands of former students and family members throughout the country. The Commission is convinced that such an act must recognize the importance of education in strengthening the cultural identity of Aboriginal people and providing a better basis for success. Albert Marshall, a former student of the Shubenacadie residential school in Nova Scotia, made this point forcefully to the Commission. The current education system has been designed to completely eradicate who I am and to kill that Indian Mi'kmaq spirit that's in me. But I do know I need knowledge and I need education. But the kind of education I need has to be reflective of who I am as a Mi'kmaq. And that knowledge that I get, that I will receive, I have a responsibility with that knowledge to pass it down so others will benefit from it. The kind of legacy that I want to leave my children and the future generations is one of which they will be able to excel, that will be able to compete without having to worry about is the education system going to further eradicate themselves. Call to action. Number 10. We call upon the federal government to draw new Aboriginal education legislation with the full participation and informed consent of Aboriginal peoples. The new legislation would include a commitment to sufficient funding and would incorporate the following principles: providing sufficient funding to close identified educational achievement gaps within one generation, improving education attainment levels and success rates, developing culturally appropriate curricula, protecting the right to Aboriginal languages, including the teaching of Aboriginal languages as credit courses, enabling parental and community responsibility, control and accountability similar to what parents enjoy in public school systems, enabling parents to fully participate in the education of their children, respecting and honoring treaty relationships. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much.